Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to cut off and repair the sides of your rows in crochet. So here we have a little swatch, and let's say, for whatever reason, we need to cut off some of the stitches along the side while maintaining and keeping the rest of our fabric. That's what I'm going to be demonstrating for you today. To do this, you'll need, of course, the piece that you want to do surgery on, a good sharp pair of scissors, a yarn needle, and I do recommend having some stitch markers handy to help you catch any loops so that they don't disappear on you. Let's get started. So why would you do this? Why would you cut off the sides of your rows? Well, there's a variety of reasons. If it was a piece this big, I'd say just pull it all out and remake your rows. But if you have a larger piece, maybe part of a garment that you're running on a deadline or something, or you just don't have it in you to frog it back and remake it, you can do a little bit of crochet surgery. I do recommend this for projects where you will be working a final border around it or where you're going to seam along that edge so that the evidence of our surgery can be a little more hidden. So first things first, we have to decide where we're going to cut. The easiest way is to cut between the stitches going straight up. Here I have a simple swatch of double crochet stitches, but you could do this on any stitch pattern. Just keep in mind, the more complicated the stitch pattern, the more complicated this little bit of crochet surgery is going to be. We also want to, of course, pay attention to where we cut, because if we cut too close to the edge we want to have, we run the risk that the ends of the yarn will be too short for us to deal with, and we'll have to pull out extra stitches we didn't mean to lose. So what I recommend is that you find a line where you want your swatch to actually end, and then cut about 2 stitches over from that. That will give you a little bit more to pull out by hand as we undo the stitches on each row after we do the cutting, but it will save you from having an end that's too short to deal with and losing more fabric than you meant to. So, with that said, let's jump on in. Now, again, I just have a small swatch here. I don't really have a particular number of stitches that I need to have, so I'm just going to jump right in. And I'm going to start right at the bottom of my swatch here, and I'm going to cut right between 2 stitches. And this will sort of give me a line to cut straight up between those stitches. And I can even count and say, okay, I've got 2 stitches here that I'm cutting off. And that way I won't accidentally start cutting at an angle and cut off more stitches than I meant to. Again, I want to actually remove 3 or 4 stitches here, but I want to give myself some yarn to play with. So once we've cut that off, we can get rid of that. We are going to create lots of little fuzzy ends here. So at this point, I want to pull up my stitch markers and have those ready to go to secure any of the loops that come up as I start pulling out these stitches. So again, we cut off 2 stitches. Let's say we wanted to come 2 more over, and then we want this to be sort of the line that we're aiming for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start right here at the top, and I'm going to just gently start pulling out those stitches. Now, right away, we've got a loose loop here at the top of the stitch that we want to be our final stitch. So I'm going to take one of my stitch markers and secure that so it can't go anywhere. This will give me some freedom to play with this end without worrying I'm going to pull out more stitches than I meant to. And here's where you just need to take your time. We don't want to cut again unless we absolutely have to. We want to just take our time and undo each of the stitches that we don't want anymore by hand. So you can see that line came out really nicely, and when we weave in our ends, we can use this to secure that loop. But now we're going to come down to the next row. So we need to find where those stitches are. And again, I'm going to gently start pulling those apart. Anytime I've got a loose loop like this, I'm going to take one of my stitch markers and secure it. I might end up pulling that out, but I've got it secured right now until I can come back to it and decide if I do want to cut it out. So then I can come back up here and address this little mess of yarn here on the side. And again, just going to take my time and untangle it bit by bit. So if you're somebody who hates getting tangles out of yarn, this might not be your favorite technique, but it can be a good one if you find yourself in a pinch and you just need to get rid of a few stitches along the sides of rows. Like I say, this works best if you are going to be adding a border later, or if this is part of a garment, so you know that you need the pieces to be a particular size. Something where what we do along the edge here will be pretty hidden. We can make it look pretty good, but we want to make it look really, really nice. So now here's where I really want to take my time and say, okay, if I pull this out, will it release any loops that I don't mean to release? Or do I want to just pull down on the end? And I think right here, let's pull it out and see. Yes, there we go. Nice, nice end right there. So I'm going to let that hang out, and I'll weave that end in here when I come back to that section. Now, we stop and take a look here. This is the edge of our stitch. We want to make sure to secure this stitch, so we do need to secure that loop, but we can pull the other stitches at the end of this row out of the way and find that end again. There's going to be lots of ends here, and of course, the taller the piece, the more ends you'll have. Again, this is just 6 rows. If I were to actually need to cut these off or need this to be narrower with only 6 rows, I would just redo them. But on a bigger piece, of course, you're going to have quite a long edge to do this along. So again, I'll pull that out, and now I can see that stitch is worked into this stitch, so that is secured, and I can let that hang out. And again, move on down to the next row. And we just want to take our time, row by row. If you see any loops sticking out along the side here, even if you haven't gotten to them yet, grab a stitch marker, get those nice and secured, and just take your time. You can see this is a whole extra stitch here, so I need to continue pulling that out. Even though it would be easy to just finish that one up, it's too many stitches for this row. And as I mentioned before, we don't want to fall prey to the temptation to pull the scissors back out to just chop that off, because we just run the risk that these ends are going to be too short for us to deal with, and then we lose stitches we didn't want to lose. Okay, pulling this apart, there we go. This is where we want to take our time a little bit, make sure we don't pull too hard or too much once we start getting up to the edge here. Let me pull that one through. Get some of these little bits out of the way here so we can see. And let's see. Just have to take our time with it. There we go. And there we go. Give that a little tug. And now that is lined up nicely right along this side. But look, right here, we're about to have a tragedy. Right there was one of those loops. So like I say, keep an eye out for those as you go. As soon as you spot them, put them on a stitch marker. With that secured, then we can pull out here right along the side. We're almost at the bottom. So you can see on our little swatch here, it goes relatively quickly. But you do still just want to take your time with it. Now, when you come down to the bottom here, something to point out, we've got our chains. We don't want to lose our chains either. So we want to make sure, as we pull this out, to secure the bottom chain with one of these stitch markers as well. Keep a close eye on that. That one down there will definitely sneak up on you. So every so often, whenever I'm doing something like this, something really intense, I lay it out, lay it on my table in front of me, good bright light, take a look and see, am I just pulling it out to where I want it to be, or am I going too far? Have I lined everything up? You can see that is that end right there. So that is a short one, so keep a close eye on that. Having a table like this in front of you is really recommended for this. Again, some bright light. We don't want to lose anything in the dark. And of course, just by dropping it off our lap, we always run the risk of losing stitches. And when you're doing something like this, we want to avoid any surprises. There we go. All right. And almost done with this one. Thanks for sticking with me. I just wanted to make sure to give you guys a full look at how to do this without skipping any of the steps. So make sure you see all of it as we go here. So we're pulling out our last little bit here, it looks like. Just got to figure out where the end goes. There we are. One more pull through, I think, on this one. Yes, and there we go. All right, let's get our little bits here out of the way. Give our ends a little tug. And now we can see what we are dealing with. We have a new end of our row. We can go back and if need be, count through and make sure each of these rows have the right number of stitches per the pattern that we're following. And now we're ready to address those ends. So I'm going to pull up my yarn needle. Yeah, like I say, get all these little bits here out of the way. And again, I like to start at the top. But that said, keep a close eye. Remember, we had just this little guy here down in this stitch. So make sure. Yes, this is the last stitch we want to save. So this is a particularly short end. So we want to make sure to be really, really careful with this one. So what I'm going to do is make sure, there we go. to pull that end right on through that loop. These are the risks of doing crochet surgery like this. Sometimes you'll end up with less of an end that you hoped for. But I'll pull that through and secure it nice and tight, just like we normally would with an end at the top. And now it's nice and safe. And again, this is a technique you're going to use if you're going to be seaming or putting a border around it. So those little foibles will all be hidden. Now we can come right back to the top. You can see we've got another loose loop up here. So I'm going to use that same end to do the same thing. We can do it with our fingers, we can do it with our yarn needle, and just send that right through the loop so that it's nice and secure. And then, of course, we can weave in our end just as we normally would. I'm just going to tack it down right there and call it good for the sake of time. But then, as I say, we just work our way right on down the side. We can see the next one. We've got another loop here with a string. We want to do the same thing. Make sure we don't lose that loop. And we can send our end right through it. Like so. And now it's nice and secured. And then we can weave in that end. And oops, it looks like I missed one. As always, there's always a few sneaky ends, right? There we go. So there was one in between that was just sort of in between those two rows. So basically, you should have an end at the top of every row, which is, of course, the bottom of the row above it. So in between all your rows, you'll have an end that you do need to address and weave in. So this is a lengthy process. It can be, depending. But you can see we also get a really nice edge when we take our time. You can see how this is really shaping up really beautifully right here. Especially once we put our border on it or seam it up to the piece next to it. All the little bits, all the bits of strangeness right here will all disappear. And again, we're just working our way right down the side. Now I've got another loop. So I'm going to pull up on that so I don't lose it. Find the end, put it on my yarn needle. If you don't have a yarn needle, if you're a beginning crocheter, these and stitch markers are definitely the two tools once you've got your hooks that I recommend adding to your notions bag. And again, we're just working our way right on down. And I would weave in these ends as I go to make sure they're each secured. And of course, then it will all be ready. There we go. So that gives you the idea. You can see we've done our crochet surgery. We have cut off the ends of those rows. We've got some ends to weave in. But other than that, we are now ready to attach this to the next piece or add a beautiful border at exactly the width we desire. So that's how you cut off the sides of those rows. And that's how to cut off the ends of your rows of your crochet. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more crochet tips and great patterns.